So obviously, I'm going to check the live stream now to make sure that everything is good. And then we are about to get started again. Yeah. Right. And again, it looks like the live stream is working. Again. All right.
Hita.
Biba, biba, biba. All right. Half a day total samsugwena hudzong estigi on the web on episode Fanachu. Half a day nanho si Michael Luhan Bavakwa, and I'm happy to have with me today Maria Hernandez May from Hita Litekyan, a member of the Ritidian Families Coalition. And Maria may be joined today by her mother, Lou Flores Bejado. But Maria has been on Fanachu a few times over the years. We're always glad that when she joins to talk about a number of different issues. But we're here today to talk about the issue of, Maria, when you've been on before, we've talked about intergenerational activism, this place known as Litekyan, Ritidian, what it means to, enigi si senora. Buena senora, hungan.
She just pulled in as you were saying
running late.
that she might be
Hungan,
joining.
anak ko ilan a lot mo. Anak ko ihani mo. Long life
Started
to you,
it.
senora. Hungan.
Dude, as he was saying generational activism, my mom walks in.
And so this place, Litekyan, Ritidian, it means so many things. For some people, they think of it as just a beautiful place to go and spend a day. For some people, it's a wildlife refuge. And one reason why we're gathered today is to talk about how there was a celebration of the 30th anniversary of the wildlife refuge there. But for others, it's a site of protest. People have challenged, it as a place where there's a firing range to be built. But for your family and for other families, it's a site of protest and a place that means something more. It's a place that that has ancestral memories. It's a place of farming, of being connected to the land, of memories going back generations, living off the land, living off the sea, and a place, that was taken from your family and that you and other families have been trying to get back. And so I've always been honored that your family in particular has, come on to Fanachu and shared these stories of intergenerational activism, fighting for the return of lands at Litekyan. And so Sidus Masitalu, Purifinatun Mizu Guini para Fanachu. And so Hafatatat Manu Hamzu.
Malik a day. We're doing well, just busy in this new year. But thank you for asking and thank you for having us on board and talk about generational activism. Yes, I've been in myself and my prima Kathy McCullum, as you already know, and many other activists have been in doing this hard work, this passionate work for the last 30 plus years. We were in the presence of our great co-defuntu, if you will, with due respect, Angel Santos at Beneventi. I think it was not Joe Garrido, but Ben Garrido. All these have passed on, but they're to me, they were like my mentors, very strong activists fighting also for the land. And I always like to give them credit or some point of respect, because if not for them, none of us would have access the way we do today to Route 3A and to Litekyan at this time. So many kudos and blessings and memories to our four father activists, if you will, to them. But yes, again, this work continues today. And so, with the help of Maria and her group, her generation, Maria was 5 years old when we were, protesting camp out protests. But before that, you know, with the designation, and we talk about the designation of the wildlife refuge 30 years ago. Yeah, that definitely, when we brought ourselves to the celebration, if you will, it wasn't, you know, out of disrespect to them. It was out of more educating the public that we're going to go in there, that, yeah, this was stolen land. It was to be returned to the original landowners. That was the initial intent, really, until Fish and Wildlife stepped in. So I'm glad that, you know, we were able to create that presence on that day. And I have to say that many of the visitors also, you know, respected our position. They may not have known, but they stopped in and also asked for some a permission to enter, you know, which was really, really kind of them. And we gave them, you know, our respect back. So that was where we're at. If you want to add, yeah.
No, assiduous Masi Senora.
Yeah.
And so Maria, tell us more about this. And so the Wildlife Refuge celebrated their 30th anniversary last month. And I know that you and the other families called for a demonstration down there, sort of a solemn, and actually let me share, because I know that you sent it to me, sort of a mourning, right? A demonstration of mourning. So let me just share real quickly. Your call: forever in our hearts, mourn with us. Join the Ritidian families as we mourn 60 years of land theft, forced displacement, and occupation of our ancestral land. Wear Black funeral attire. And so can you share a little bit more about sort of what you were thinking in this call for this demonstration?
Yeah, we, like my mom mentioned, I was only 5 at the time when we started doing the camp out protests at Litekyan. And then so that experience and feeling all the energy of my elders at the time, and being part of almost every meeting with lawmakers, with the congresswoman at the time the firing range was first proposed here in Guam. You know, just seeing my elders like pound their fists on the table and really cry and see tears coming down their faces, and just having witnessed all of that, and so all of that kind of, I carry that with me as we move forward in this fight, and remembering all of our Sina who have passed on, that they're still with us today, and including, you know, our former attorney Pete Scrow actually recently passed away. And so I do believe that he, as well as our elders, are all kind of guiding us. So whenever there's something that upsets our family and our coalition, I do pray to Ancestor and to Sina to give us guidance on how to best move forward. And so when we were hearing about a celebration commemorating the 30th anniversary of the establishment of the refuge, it was, even though I didn't grow up there in the same way that my mom did, because it was taken, you know, well, you know, in the 60s, and you know, I just didn't like my experience at Litekyan or the camp out protests that my mom was talking about. I was actually surprised at how much it had affected me to hear that they were decided to celebrate the day. And so we're just in a weird sort of situation with the Fish and Wildlife Refuge kind of reaching out to us to ask if we wanted to be on a proclamation that the governor had planned to sign. And I was like, you know, I guess, you know, that's pretty thoughtful, I guess, to include the names of the Litekyan landowners, and just to acknowledge that there was once, you know, that people had once lived on the land before it was turned into a refuge. But at the same time, we're kind of being put in this awkward position where they're asking to put our name on something that's you know, commemorating the establishment of the refuge. So that was an interesting sort of request that we got from the Refuge to be put on that proclamation. And we had requested just to see the language on the proclamation so that we could make sure that everything on that proclamation kind of aligned with our experiences as Ritidian landowners. And the Refuge staff that we were speaking to at the time actually decided to withhold that from us. It didn't feel comfortable sharing that with us. And so, you know, it just, I think it just added a little bit more frustration on my end. Like you know, you want to put us on a proclamation, but you don't want to show us exactly what's on the proclamation. And then they invited us to the signing. We decided not to go to the signing, and we let them know that we wouldn't be attending, and this would be out of protest of the proclamation signing. And then on Sunday, we just decided, just seeing all these flyers talking about it being a celebration, that we didn't agree with that. We wanted to juxtapose what they were saying on their end about it being a celebration with it for us being a day of mourning. So we decided to call on the community to come together with us, wear Black. So we set up right at that first parking lot. There's like one big parking lot where the tourists like to go, and like a big field where they set up for events at Litekyan. And so we set up 2 pop-up tents. We had all of our flyers there, as you see in this photo. Banners there. And yeah, it was just a really solemn, like we had this solemnity. We invited Gimatenguma, Dakota Camacho and his team to come out and do a blessing. And we all kind of circled up and chanted together and put offerings down, and we all brought photos of the original landowners, of our families, and we were holding them as we were speaking, and everybody kind of got a chance to share their just their memories of Litekyan. It's just a really, really powerful day of honoring our ancestors, and just a really also just was hard to kind of process the fact that like 20 feet away from us there are like people celebrating as we're all here circling up, and you know, Dakota and his their chant group Gimatenguma were blowing the kulu, and yeah, it was just it's kind of a tough day to process, like, and still to this day I'm still kind of processing how I feel about all of this. And that's where I kind of give it up to our Saina and ancestors to kind of help me process it in a way where we know how to best move forward in this fight.
Wow, no, thank you for sharing the background on this this solemn demonstration. And are these some of the manyaina that you mentioned, sort of the ancestors that have passed on?
Yes, yeah, we brought photos of my Tata Benigno Leon Guerrero Flores, Dolores Martinez Flores, my Nana, Ana Matanani,
my great grandmother, yes. Ana
Matanani Pangilinan,
Matanani Pangilinan, who is the original landowner of where the Refuge office sits. So that's her piece of property there. And many hectares. And then, you know, of course, we also brought my grandmother and my my grandfather rather. So Tin Benigno L.G. Flores, the other original landowners. And then just like his Auntie Pa, and you know, like the siblings of my Nana, who are also I guess children of Kananan, my great grandmother. Sorry, it's all just family members that we brought that have passed on, and that we brought pictures together along with my aunt Janet Leon Guerrero was present, and her father is Alfonso Pangilinan. He's also a very strong activist at the time when we first started in 30 years ago with Olympia Cruz. There's a lot of different names. Sorry, I'm just
So
throwing
many
them out, but
different
these are
names,
all
so many fighters in our family.
Yeah, in our family, we've just everyone just came out in full force, including my Uncle Juan Flores, my brother Chris Bijado, you know, when later on he came on stronger. But this is when we started then, it started transitioning into the firing range discussion, but that's a different topic. I don't want to add that, you know, on that day, all this, the presence of seeing the celebration and then our presence there really brought back these emotions that I felt, that we all felt, our family felt 30 years ago, and including that of our late attorney, Pete Scroll, where we were just full of shock, dismay, anger, you know, disappointment really in our government, because, you know, they made a decision that to this day affects us negatively. And so it's so important that our leaders, you know, I know I'm not a 10,000 vote count here, but, you know, I'm a native and you know, a native to this land. And, you know, the history, everyone knows the history of how, you know, this land has been held hostage now for 30 years. And today there's nothing to show for it, right? It had a purpose. It had a purpose of trying to invigorate the survival of these endangered species. 30 years ago, my mantra was that this is an absolute farce, total deceit, deception, because the habitat then is not, Litekyan is not conducive, what I say, to the survival of endangered species. And my words prove today correct. And so, yeah, but just wanted to share that, you know, the emotions we felt then were the emotions we feel today. But I think, like Maria continues to trust in our ancestors, I continue to pray daily for their guidance and through the divine intervention, because it's bigger than us. This is not just about easily returning the land. It takes our leaders to come in and support us, and we've been really hanging by ourselves by the thread in these last 30 years. And it's take us to really go, it's a congressional act, I would think, right? Yeah. And it's going to take us to have an appearance or with the
yeah, which we're kind of planning. We're organizing, and we know that this is a long fight, and it has been. And sometimes I look at my Sina and I ask them, like, how are you still doing this work? I'm only 34 and I'm tired already. And it's their energy that keeps me going. And just wanted to mention my Auntie Kat as well. The day of the protest, she couldn't even bring herself to go. That's how painful that this is, you know, just to bring it back to the human experience of just land loss and you know, really as Indigenous people attaching our identity to our lands. And here we are 60 years later, and this is after it being taken twice, you know, once in the 60s with my tata. The story was, and my Uncle Tom Bijado was, who was actually on Fanachu last year. He was kind of like the Karidu in a way, like he's like the eldest boy and eldest grandson. And I guess in Chamorro culture, the eldest grandson tends to like be, what do you even call puksai to their grandfather. So the grandfather would raise the eldest grandson like their own son. And so my Uncle Tom was maybe like 3 or 4 at the time at Litekyan when the Navy yeoman came to bring the papers to my tata's home there. And what was that?
He was about 9.
Oh, he was 9? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so he was like 8 or 9 at the time. I don't know why he said 3 or 4.
No,
okay, because I just interviewed him for this Guam Preservation Trust thing, and so he told me this story. And so he was saying that when the yeoman came to the house, he served my tata the papers and he said, you're not allowed to live here anymore. And my tata, he obviously lived off the land. He had to carry a 22 rifle just to protect himself from the pigs, right? So he just happened to have that. Hi, Nanny. Hi, Nanny.
Oh, she's an activist too, definitely. Yep,
Yes.
and a lot of stories to be told.
Makana is famous
Makana
on Instagram.
Oh,
okay, yeah.
beautiful.
So the story was that my tata took his 22 rifle and he pointed it in the Navy yeoman's face and he said, "Get the F off my land." And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of this decades-long fight that we are still doing today. And my tata is actually in a lot of the photos that I sent you as well. And I have some photos here myself that I can show before we jump off podcast. But yeah, so it kind of just knowing that our family's resistance in particular is one that is heavily documented. In the 90s, there's legislation that was passed unanimously by lawmakers at the time that stated verbatim that the lands at Ritidian Point were taken by force, deceit, and theft. And that's there on the legislative record. And then here we are to this day. There still continue to be plans to use the land for now it's proposed to be used as a buffer zone for a 700-acre firing range complex, which we continue to resist. But I think the fact that our family story kind of goes back to this place of resistance, it kind of challenges that narrative, that liberation day sort of narrative of all Chamorro families just decided that they wanted to give their lands to the United States because they were grateful that the United States came back and liberated the islands. And we're like,
Again.
you're free to take the land, when in reality there continues to be a resistance, not only from our family, and we always say we're just one of many, and when we fight and we go out and we protest, we're representing all Chamorro families who still hold out hope to one day return home. And whenever there's news about a family that needs help, advocating for their lands, we're there with the my family in the 90s was organizing with the Harmon Cliff Line families. Today we really jumped in to support the Eagles Field families who were fighting against their lands being designated for the hospital. And so yeah, we've had people over the years actually reach out to us, say, my family still has land in Sumai. I still hold out hope that one day we'll be able to return home. And we encourage those messages. We encourage those who want to get together and organize together to continue to reach out. And it really is through solidarity and unity that we can move forward and really fight for land return, because what's happening in our island is really unjust, just with 1/3 of our island being occupied by the Department of Defense and our entire region being transformed into the largest military training area in the world. There's this violence should never be normalized. It's not something that we should become desensitized to. We're such a peaceful people and we don't want our legacy to be war.
No, it's so true. Sidus Mase. And thank you so much for reminding all of us about the history of Litekyan and the land takings there, because I think most people understand that there is a history of land taking on Guam, but the particulars of it can be lost so quickly that people may not even realize it. And I'll give you an example that this week, because I started my Zoom tomorrow classes again this week. And so every time I do, I interact with 100 or 200 new Chamorros from around the world who are interested in learning more about their language and culture. And so I was interacting with a younger Chamorro guy in his 20s who's super passionate. He's got Chamorro t-shirts, he's got Chamorro tattoos. He's incredibly passionate about being Chamorro. And he was like, he was talking about, Chamorro pride, Chamorro strength and stuff. And he was talking about Sumai, and he was talking about Litekyan, and he was talking about how the Japanese had taken Sumai from the Chamorro people. And then I was like, oh yeah, again. And then the United States took Sumai from the Chamorro people right after that. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's the second half of that story, is that the Japanese took it and it was incredibly traumatic. And then when the people returned, the United States displaced them again, and they built some houses for them in Santa Rita, but it was still traumatic. And I imagine a lot of those people wish that they could have gone home to Sumai instead of living in Santa Rita. But
Yeah.
many of them moved on, but a lot of those families still hold the Sumai pride. And for this young Chamorro, it was, despite all of his pride in being Chamorro, he still never heard that story that America had taken the Sumai, and that's why Sumai was lost. He had assumed the Japanese had done it. And so it was very telling, because here was somebody who was passionate and learning all of these things, but that had never crossed his mind. And so that's why I'm so glad that your family and other families have taken on that responsibility, because it's so easy nowadays, especially with how, we're so plugged into so many things. There's so many social media feeds, there's so many things that are out there to take our attention. We can lose sight of what matters. You can lose sight of the land. You can lose sight of our resources very quickly. Lose sight of the fact that if we, Maria, you have been such an important champion of it, that, we can have 100 million TikTok views, but if we don't have drinking water, I'm on Maktai hit Shampring. Where are we? We can, we may have 10 million visitors on our island, but oh man, if we don't have any drinking water, if we don't have an aquifer, then what are we going to do? And so, and I wanted to give you a chance actually to just talk about that, because I know you did a documentary project, and you've really been outspoken about that. And so because the firing range complex, the increase in militarization is something that is likely to damage our aquifer and increase risks to our drinking water. So please share some of the risks, some of the potential problems.
Yeah, I think when our family organizes too, one of the things that we like to say to those who come out to the protests is that yes, we are centering Indigenous land rights in this struggle, but the reality is that there are so many different impacts of the firing range complex and all of the destructive activities that the Department of Defense moves forward with. And one of the things that we've been trying to raise awareness about is the potential impacts of 7 million bullets being shot above our main water source. And I feel like, whenever you speak to activists here in Guahan and abroad, it just is like a common sense thing. It's like, why would you move forward with that? Like, I feel like we don't even really need to come out and say here's we have all the supporting facts and information down to EPA studies that show why this is destructive to our land and to our water resources. But yeah, I just remember being in a meeting when there were about 25 5 different orgs that came together to speak to Governor Liu. I don't know what year this was, 2019 maybe. And
Yeah.
so there were like 25 of us that came together. And I don't know if this is how the Fanachu Coalition was started. But yeah, there were so many, like my mom had like a health shack, little shake shack that her little small business was on that list too. But yeah, so we came together and everybody's kind of like sharing their thoughts and perspective. We just ran around the table and, you know, I just remember saying like, this is above our aquifer. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? It's any project that has the potential to harm our water resources, we should not be moving forward with. And then that brings me to think about Senator Sabina Perez introducing a water resolution, I believe in 2021. I think 2021, but yeah, so she was just raising awareness about you know, the potential impacts to the aquifer from the firing range, and about half of the lawmakers at the time were questioning whether they should vote in favor of this resolution, because they're saying that the resolution kind of calls into question the military buildup and their support for the military buildup. And just from a rational perspective, hearing that debate go on about, you know, well, why would we want to sign on to this if it's kind of making us seem like we're putting doubt or that we don't support the buildup? Like, why would we want to support this resolution? And you know, it's just kind of like makes you kind of look at these lawmakers like, what is going on in your head? Like, anything that has potential to harm our water resources. I mean, if the buildup is going to harm our water resources, we need to be anti-buildup. That's the reality. We can't survive. This resource has sustained our people for thousands of years pre-colonization. And we need to not be debating about, you know, whether the DoD perceives our vote as being against buildup projects. Like, we should be very anti-buildup if it harms our aquifer. And so, yeah, in 2022, created some film resources for the community with the Bertha Foundation. It was a fellowship. I was able to speak to a lot of the different activists, advocates in Guahan, in the Northern Marianas, in Hawaii, to get their perspectives on impacts to water throughout the Pacific. And yeah, it was like, it was a lot. I have so much respect for filmmakers, and I always tell people I'm not a filmmaker in any way. It was just kind of like really grassroots, me and my 16-year-old cousin Erin going around and recording people speaking about you know, concerns about the military expansion happening in the region. And yeah, it was like a full year of nonstop work, just and travel. And my mom came with me to support me because my nanny Karita was so young at the time, so she came with me and you know, was my support system, and watched my nanny as I went out to do interviews in Oahu. And we went to Tinian. We spoke to the Tinian Women's Association. We went to Saipan. We spoke with our Commonwealth 670. In the films, also spoke to a lot of heavies championing water, who have been championing water for longer than I've been alive. Anti-Hope Cristobal and Senator Sabina Perez has also been championing water issues for 10 to 15 years now. So just to have their perspectives in the films was so important. So yeah, I hope I haven't really pushed these out as well as I should have. I haven't really put them, I don't even think I made one of the links public yet, but maybe I can share the links with Maget and he can get it up on the link for this podcast episode.
Oh yes, Hungen. I've put it, so I've shared the YouTube page, the YouTube links on the live streams that are out there. So people, and I was sharing part of the videos while you were talking, so people can check it out. And but yeah, wonderful work. Wonderful,
Thank you. That
wonderful.
was a lot. I think my little cousin's like, I'm never making a documentary again. He's like traumatized. It was a lot. It was a lot of work. It took a lot, like a good 6 months to like recover. So Biba, all of our filmmakers, like the
Yeah.
puzzle piecing of everything and putting all that together is a lot. But yeah,
Again.
for
For
sharing.
those of you watching and listening in right now, if you have any questions, para si Maria, pat si Nananya, si Senora Lu, please comment. Please comment on any wherever you're watching. We have people tuning in on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Facebook. You can also send a message on WhatsApp if you're connected to me on WhatsApp. Um, Again, I know there was a few people that had sent in some comments earlier, uh, and I can ask them, but I wanted to, while I'm going to collect some of the questions, though, you had sent some wonderful images of kind of your family back in the day.
Oh
And
yeah.
I wanted to share them. Hold on, let me find them. Where are they? Oh wait, here. Give me 1 second while I open them. And then yeah, I wanted to hear you and your mother put forward just yeah, talk about them, because this is important too, is that we connect the personal to the political, to the familial, to the cultural. All of these dimensions are key. And so looking at, can you see the images?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Oh, this is my uncle Alfonso Pangilinan, Uncle Bocho, and she's definitely one of our fighters and activists, testifying in front of the legislature, being at every single protest. As to, he's of course has passed on. I guess going maybe on the third year, so we miss him tremendously. He was also a camp out activist, always present. So he's my great uncle. He is the brother of my grandmother, Dolores Martinez Flores. So that's Uncle Botsu at
Yeah.
Litekyan. And then these are the little kids when we were picnicking, coming together as families.
This is us as nannies. I see my brother, some of my cousins. I think that's Dominic. And yeah, this is just our generation.
Mhm.
And we were so oblivious to it being like a camp out protest. We were just like, oh, we're having fun. This is like normal to like park at a locked fence and hop it and pass all of our supplies one by one and walk to our camp out area and roast marshmallows. And this is actually some of the like foundational uh it's just like really a foundational experience in my life to for my mom and my aunts and uncles to bring us all as children together down to Litekyan. And I still remember so many, the sights, the sounds, the smells um of that time, and just the refuge office staff. We didn't have a good relationship with the wildlife refuge at the time in the 90s. So as a little kid, I was just like, oh, that's the bad guy. They were, their refuge uniforms, and would come down with their notebooks and take all of the license plate numbers. And I still remember the name of the one guy that we that we really didn't like, that I won't mention on the podcast. Um, but yeah, so just like all of the altercations, like things would get really heated sometimes. Like just I remember a refuge staffer shoving my little cousin Steven, and my auntie Kat like ripped his shirt ripped his shirt off. I remember like marching down that road from where my tata's home used to be located to the refuge office, which is where as my mom said, my Nanambiha's home used to be located at that refuge office, and we would march from the camping area, like lot 7, 8, down to the refuge office, and just looking up as a kid and seeing all of my elders holding their signs. And I just remember them like pushing us to that door, like they pushed us up to like the refuge door. So us as little kids were like banging on the doors, like and like I remember the refuge staff like poking out the umbrella, like putting umbrella out of the door to kind of like poke at us. And we were like I think on the front page of the paper or something, like
Well,
the
they
next
called
day.
the police.
Yeah.
So the federal police came on board, but they couldn't do anything for some reason. That well, I'm sorry, it was local police that came on board, but one of the I think it must have been Auntie Cat or one of the ladies that were present. She had the law that stated, the Gov Guam law that stated that, we cannot, law enforcement cannot arrest any local people for protesting in these types of regards. And I don't have the law, I'm sorry, but anyways, it was a legal paper that,
it just said like Guam police doesn't have the authority to arrest any of I think it was specific to the Ritidian landowners for being on their ancestral land.
So they let us go, but then the federal police came on board and came in, and they actually arrested us. So those of us who were at that refuge at that time protesting were arrested, and that included my Auntie Olympia Cruz, Auntie Pa, Uncle Botsu, myself, Kathy McCullum, my prima, and my brother, Tony Bihara. And so, yeah, we had to go in front of the judge, the former defunct Judge John Pinko, and had a hearing in his courtroom. But fortunately for him, he really understood where we were coming from, because his family also owned land at Marble Cave area. So, he gave us permission to continue to visit Litekyan and continue to be there. And he made note of that. So that we were grateful for that. So we were not arrested or fined at that time, thankfully to defunct judge, the late Judge John Pinko. Yes. So many stories. Okay, Tata. Yeah, this is my grandfather. Yes, Tata. And yeah, he was always there present. And of course, you'll see again, Auntie Pa. Those names continue to show up because you're always present. So Tata, Auntie Pa, Uncle Botchu was there. And you see Maria there, I think. And my children are always present. My 5 boys and Maria, I made sure to bring them along to every visit, whether it was a picnic or a protest at Litekyan. And also, like our other nieces and nephews.
And look at Tata, still so strong. Both met good. How old was he there? He was.
Oh gosh, yeah, I don't remember. Yeah. Okay, but nice pictures. Thank you. Oh, Jan, this is her at her 5 years. This is Maria at 5 years old.
Oblivious to like just playing with the sand while my elders are being harassed by the refuge staff. No big deal.
You do.
Oh, here's of course, this is Kathy McCullum, Prima, and Uncle Jenny. So Juan Martinez Flores, the late Juan Martinez Flores, also very active champion, my mom's brother. And so very activist. And, he was present at every legislative hearing.
Oh, yeah.
As well as all the others, Kobochu and Auntie Pa. So I think there are reels of their testimonies at all the different public hearings and all the meetings that is called for with the late Peter Scrow. Yeah.
Yeah, if you look through all of the old testimonies and stuff, Uncle Johnny was always like extremely vocal, and I know that I really am like so sure that he and all of those who have passed on, including Pete, are guiding us forward. Sometimes I feel like I'm so overwhelmed with mom life and just having like 3 young kids, but like I'll get a call from, for example, yesterday, my friend Eli calls me. He's like, hey, we have this like time slot to go to the court to check out this case like from the Ritidian families back in this time. Do you want to come? And I'm like, yeah, let's go check it out. So it's like we just went together and looked at some old court cases from the 90s. So yeah, get you friends that are down to go to the court, look through old records with you. And yeah, so I was like telling Eli, like, wow, this is probably Pete that's like bringing us down here, because without somebody kind of like pushing me to do that, I'm so busy that sometimes like I put things like that on the back burner. But we're going to try it this year to really get records together and get, all of that together in one file. This is Junior, Dominic. These are my cousins. Auntie Kat's son, Steven. We call him Junior.
Yes.
Yeah. So these are just fun memories.
Dominic is is Uncle Jenny's grandson, Dominic Flores. This is my mom, my wonderful, beautiful mom, whom we miss so much. She's a very quiet and gentle woman. But again, she was always there present as well. So she is the daughter of, of course, my Benigno LG Flores, and was at the first protest when the Chamorro Nation jumped over that fence in the 90s to break down that gate and give us access to Route 3. So she was present.
Grandma
so
was
I
there?
guess Grandma was there. Yes, I recall.
Look at this fashion icon.
Yes.
Can I get this shirt? I want this hand me down. Yeah.
Yeah, the same tree. If you'll see the
nice
tree,
hammer.
it's been there.
Yeah, you'll see this tree there still to this day. I think right out here, this is lot 7, 8-ish. My Uncle Tom remembers as a kid looking out, and it's still there, looking out from the shore to the reef, and there's a rock there at the reef that looks like a crab. So yeah, if you're ever at Litekyan and you go to that area, look out to the reef, it's still there. Yeah. So it's just something that he remembers seeing, recognizing as a child, and showed us more recently. Yeah. The crew.
Yeah, still the same family. You see my dad there, and the lobster hunter. And then just a family always coming together. And it was just not our immediate family. It included my great aunts and, the extended family. So that's why we're all very close, because of Litekyan.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you are doing this. And we're so thankful that you pulled these photos out. I didn't know if we would have time to look at these, but when we do protests, when we do any sort of outreach events, sometimes like time doesn't allow us to go through and like mention the names of every single person that has been with us and continues to fight with us and give us guidance from above. So just being able to like scroll through these photos and remember them and just honor them means so much.
Punga, now that I work at a museum, this type of transmission of knowledge is made, I understand its value even more, because it's one thing just in your family, in your village, but when you're in a museum and there's, let's say, 10,000 images, and you see there's all these images where you look at the back of it now and there's no names, and you think, oh man, is there anyone alive who may know the name of this person? Is there anyone who's still living who might know? And you think, oh, time's running out. Time's running out. So I'm more mindful of that now. So that's why I'm when you sent me these, I was like, oh, I want to take some time to just have the two of you while you're here, just to share your thoughts as a family, to reflect, and because these, you know, it's in, what we, the protests, it's documenting the protests are important, but documenting the reasons why we protest are also important too. And that's that balance that we talk about, right? And for activists, that's so key, because especially for those of us who push constantly to be out there and to take a stand, you burn yourself out when you forget why you're doing it. If you can't feel sort of the love, if the memories kind of lose, they get faded and you kind of can't. So that's why having that balance, and then even even Maria, you talking about the fashion icon. The fashion icon, just that moment there, it just like it takes you back, it refreshes the memories, reconnecting to an ancestor like that. It was a beautiful moment right there. Just
Thank you
Yes,
so
yeah,
much.
and we're still
Beautiful.
trying to like honor them
Oh,
and
yes.
and just remember them as we move forward, and we still try to find ways to balance joy in our organizing. And so we are organizing an Indigenous land and water rights art show for later this year in June. So we're super excited. We're going to be putting the call out soon, and we're planning to have a little section just with the photos of all the Sina who have been part of this fight and continue to be part of this fight. As well as, honoring Pete, who, even in recent years has been reaching out to my mom and I, and we met with him last year. He was down to even go hop the fence like that week that we met with him, and he's was a fighter then and continues to give us guidance from above. And we want to have a little section honoring with photos at the art show that we're putting together, and yeah, local artists who want to be part of it, definitely keep an eye out for the call out that we're going to be putting out on our social media very soon.
oh. And I wanted to, there was just one, let's see here. Oh yes, these last two images here.
Oh, yes. Nana and Tata, yes.
Nana
Our
and
beloved
Tata,
grandma and grandpa. Yeah.
Samangi.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I think it was their
It's so
50th
beautiful.
anniversary or 60th. I think their 60th anniversary, wedding anniversary. So that's one of the almost last images that we have of both of them together. So they are dearly missed, but yeah, we can imagine all just the trauma and this, the emotions that they went through in the 60s when their land was taken. Yeah.
And word on the street is I was her Karita. Sorry, sorry, Primas. No, I'm just joking. But I know that she's I know for a fact that she's protected me in so many ways
Yes.
in this movement work, in all my travels and in everything that I do. I know for a fact that they're with all of us. They're with our families every step of the way.
Thank you for sharing
Hita,
that.
Bimba.
Oh, ayun my nananbiha.
Yeah,
Oh,
That is
my oh.
yes, and that unfortunately is
not a good photo.
not a good photo, but that is yeah, on an
Ana Metanani.
yes,
Pangaline.
Tenon and Matanani, Pengaline, and yes, the mother, of course, my great grandmother, and of course the original landowner of that building there, the land that sits where the building sits, yeah, the wildlife refuge office sits, yeah. So Nanan Biha, yes, she died quite young, but I do have memories of her, maybe up to when I was 16 or 17 years of age,
Wow.
Beautiful Nanan Biha. May her soul rest in peace.
Oh, Sidus Masi, this has been a wonderful conversation, mixing together, and I think, this is an important reminder that sort of the people think of activism as, this thing which is harsh, but and sort of family memories as these things which are softer, but no. No, we mix them together. Why are you doing this? You're doing it for those who have gone before, those who struggled, those who sacrificed, And so, but yeah, so thank you so much. I want to give you this last chance, with the time we have left, just to kind of, talk about what the Ritidian Families Coalition, you've shared a little bit about what you have on the horizon. You have an art show that's coming up. But anything else that you want to share, in terms of what you might like people to know, people to consider, ways that they can support your movement.
We do have a petition out, and we're also connecting more with the diaspora communities this year. We're going to be doing a letter campaign for folks in the diaspora to write to their congresspeople to advocate for the families and also against all of the impacts of the firing range complex that will forever irreparably harm our everything that we call sacred as a people. So yeah, we're going to be putting out that letter campaign soon. Yeah, we have so much planned. We're really excited for the art show on Monday. We are teaming up with an org called inafamalik.us, Auntie Verna Castro, Uncle Rowland Castro, to put on a webinar called Precious Water to talk about some of the threats to our water resources in the Marianas. And Uncle Rowland he has 30 years of experience in water quality testing. So he wants to provide both the diaspora community and local community with information about how to test our own water, like step by step, what is the process to collect your water and test it and where you can send it. And I think that would be really, really helpful to us with all of the water issues that we're facing, not only with the firing range, but we also have issues with PFAS and with dieldrin. Pesticide was just found in a few of our wells that had to be shut down. So really excited to connect with Uncle Rowland and Auntie Verna for that webinar. And I would just say to follow us on social media at Hita Litekyan on Instagram if you want to stay on top of all of our efforts, and if you want to come together with us and support us and just know that we're all about reciprocal kind of relationship. So if we can uplift anything that you are doing as well, we are all about just supporting each other and solidarity across our community.
Biba, si Zeus Masi. Si Zeus Masi no Hamsonodo, si Zeus Masi puri Fanatun Medzun Zen Todu, Ibonitu na Bidan Medzu puri Comunidad Zen puri Itautauta. Thank you so much for coming on and for all that you have been doing for our people. Esti Fanakpo para esti na episode Fanatsu. Adios. Este ki 8 menat li'i. Adios.
Si Zeus Masi.